I began doubting my husband when he put a password on his phone overnight, and it wasn't just the code itself that unsettled me, but the way he did it quietly, casually, like someone slipping a secret into a locked drawer, pretending nothing had changed. In a world overflowing with information, where our phones have become extensions of our minds and homes for our most intimate thoughts, a sudden lock can feel like a barricade. It felt like he had built a wall between us, and I didn't understand why. That morning, I watched him swipe across the screen, type the numbers quickly, and place the phone face down on the table. He didn't look at me. He didn't say a word. But the silence was louder than anything he could have spoken. The modern world has taught us to live glued to these small glowing rectangles, convincing us that everything important happens inside them. And for a moment, I wondered whether his entire life now lived inside that phone too, sealed away from me. I tried to ignore it at first, telling myself I was overthinking, telling myself that people have a right to privacy. But thoughts have a way of multiplying, especially when touched by insecurity. Throughout the day, tiny doubts crept in like whispers. Why now? What changed? What is he hiding? These questions echoed in my mind as I remembered how, just a few years ago, we lived without passwords, without this obsession over constant notifications. Back then, our fears were simpler, our worries slower. But today, the world moves fast, too fast, and the flood of information never stops. Our phones vibrate with messages, alerts, temptations. And we are expected to navigate it all while still pretending to be calm. Sometimes I think modern relationships aren't destroyed by people, but by the screens between them. That night, my husband slept peacefully beside me while his phone charged silently on his side of the bed, glowing faintly like a forbidden treasure. My heartbeat sped up every time I looked at it. I found myself wondering what he was protecting so urgently. Was it work? Was it something personal? Or was it someone? The fear tasted metallic, heavy, something I couldn't swallow. In the darkness, a thought repeated in my mind. If nothing is wrong, why lock it now? It wasn't jealousy that kept me awake, but confusion. Because trust isn't broken in a single moment, it cracks slowly, starting from something small. And for me, that password was the first crack. And for me, that past crack. The next morning, his routine was different too. He kept the phone close, answering messages in another room, silencing notifications when I walked by. Every action was subtle, but clear enough to stir my intuition. I understood something that day, something painful, that when someone begins protecting their phone, they are also protecting a part of their life from you. I tried to convince myself that it was nothing, that people change, that technology demands new habits. After all, everyone today lives with passwords, Face ID, two-factor authentication. We guard our devices the way people once guarded diaries. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't about digital safety, but emotional distance. And when I finally confronted him, his reaction didn't calm me. Instead of explaining, he laughed nervously, shrugged, and said it was nothing important. But nothing important shouldn't require hiding. Nothing important shouldn't make someone tense up when their phone lights up. In that moment, I realized how much power a single device has in our lives. Not because of what it contains, but because of what it can hide. Modern love isn't just about hearts anymore. It's about screens, passwords, notifications, private conversations, and the invisible world inside every pocket. And as I watched him tuck his phone into his jacket before work, I felt something inside me shift. A mix of sadness, fear, and a strange cold clarity. I wasn't just doubting him, I was doubting the entire world we had built around these devices. Because when a phone becomes more protected than a marriage, it tells you everything you need to know. The days that followed were a quiet storm inside me. The kind of tension that doesn't explode, but lingers, stretching itself thin across every moment. I kept replaying the scene in my mind. The way he typed the password quickly, the way he angled the phone away from me. And each replay brought a new interpretation, a new question, a new fear. It's strange how a single gesture can become a magnifying glass that exposes everything you tried not to see before. We live in a world where people spend more time staring into screens than into each other. Eyes, and I started to wonder whether I had missed the signs because I was too busy, too tired, too trusting. The modern age gives us endless distractions. Endless noise, endless information, but it also gives us endless places to hide. And I feared he had found one. One afternoon, as he showered, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. The sound sliced through the room. A single vibration, short and sharp, but enough to make my chest tighten. I stared at it, glowing innocently, as if daring me to reach out and touch it. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because the truth is, I didn't want to become the kind of person who needs to snoop. I wanted the truth to come freely, to be spoken, not discovered like a crime. Yet even as I tried to hold on to my integrity, my thoughts betrayed me, circling the same uneasy questions. Who is texting him? Why does he rush to silence notifications now? What is he hiding? These questions echoed like footsteps in an empty room, each one louder than the last. Later that evening, I tried to talk to him again, but the conversation felt slippery, impossible to hold. He smiled too easily, deflected too quickly, as if he were dodging invisible arrows. "It's just work," he said. "A new policy, new security measures." His words were smooth, practiced, almost too clean. But his eyes didn't match the story. And I realized something haunting, that lies don't need to be allowed to be dangerous. They can whisper, they can smile. That night, as he scrolled through his phone with the brightness lowered, I watched him from the corner of my eye. He typed with a strange tension in his shoulders. His jaw tightened slightly every time a notification appeared. And then he did it again. Placed the phone face down, like placing a lid on a boiling pot. I knew that gesture too well by then. It spoke louder than any sentence. In the silence, I felt the weight of the modern world pressing against me. Everyone says technology brings people together, but it also creates new distances, new shadows, new secrets. Phones used to be tools, now they are vaults, diaries, escape routes, entire private universes. And when someone locks that universe, you're left outside, wondering what occupies their mind more than you do. I found myself comparing our present to our past, remembering nights when we talked without distractions, when he laughed with his whole face instead of half listening while texting. Our memories felt warm, but the present felt cold. And I wondered, did something break without me noticing? Or was it breaking slowly all along? The more I thought about it, the more I realized how easily trust erodes in a digital age. Sometimes it isn't infidelity that scares us, but the possibility of emotional replacement. The idea that someone else out there could offer more excitement, more attention, more novelty. Phones make it too easy, too accessible, too constant. One evening, he stepped outside to take a call, something he rarely did before. Through the window, I saw him pacing, one hand in his pocket, the other covering his mouth as he spoke softly. The tone of his voice was different, careful, private. When he came back inside, he acted as if nothing had happened. But my heartbeat wasn't convinced. At dinner, I watched him pick up his phone every few minutes, pretending to check the time or look at the news. The glow of the screen illuminated the side of his face, casting shadows over truths he refused to share. And every time the phone lit up, I felt something inside me dim. I began noticing how often he smiled at the screen, a subtle, quiet smile he no longer wore from me. And while he believed he was hiding it well, emotions have a way of leaking through cracks. He didn't see the way his expressions betrayed him, but I did. And it hurt more than I expected. Humans have always feared the unknown. But the unknown behind a locked screen feels personal, almost invasive. It's a doorway you are forbidden to open, a curtain you are not meant to pull back. And the more he guarded his phone, the more it became a symbol, a sign that something was slipping away. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, thoughts raced through my mind. Tangled like wires, messy and impossible to sort. I wondered whether technology had changed us, whether the world had pushed us apart, whether our marriage was becoming just another casualty of digital dependency. And deep down, beneath the layers of fear and confusion, a quiet truth began forming. Trust doesn't disappear in a single moment. It dissolves slowly, like ink in water, until everything is blurred. And his password was only the beginning. The tension inside me grew quietly, spreading through my days like fog rolling across a field, thick and impossible to ignore. I tried to behave normally, to match his smile, to laugh at the same moments,
to pretend everything was fine.
But pretending is exhausting, and there is a unique sadness in acting like you don't notice what is right in front of you. As the world around us buzzed with constant notifications, trends, distractions, I felt myself drifting in the opposite direction, sinking deeper into the stillness of my thoughts. I began to pay attention to all the little patterns that once went unnoticed, the tiny behavioral shifts that reveal more than words ever could. He no longer left his phone charging in the living room like he used to. Instead, it stayed glued to him, always within reach, always protected. Even in moments where he didn't need it, he kept it close, like a shield or a secret he couldn't afford to lose. And that, more than anything, made my stomach twist. Modern life has trained us to live in a constant state of partial attention. But when someone you love saves their full attention for a device instead of you, it cuts deeper than you expect. I found myself wondering whether I'd become background noise, a familiar presence he no longer noticed because his focus had shifted to something or someone more stimulating. One evening, while we were watching a movie together, I caught him tilting his phone away from me at an angle so precise it felt rehearsed. The glow reflected on his face, highlighting a faint smile that had nothing to do with the movie. I stared at him for a moment longer than I should have, memorizing the expression he never showed me anymore. He sensed my gaze and locked the phone instantly, pretending to stretch, pretending nothing was happening. But the silence that followed wasn't just uncomfortable, it was revealing. Technology has made secrets easier to keep, but it has also made them easier to sense. Humans may not always know the truth, but we feel when something is wrong. Instinct speaks a language older than logic, and mine was screaming. In those days, I became hyper-aware of everything. How his showers lasted longer. How he turned his body slightly when answering messages. How he placed his phone face down in restaurants, in the car, even at home when it was just the two of us. I knew these signs because they weren't subtle. They were the behaviors people adopt when they don't want their inner world exposed. Every time I tried to ask a simple question, "Who was that?" or "Everything okay?" his answers came coded in defensiveness. Too fast, too sharp, too practiced. He acted as though my curiosity was a crime, as though wanting transparency in a marriage was unreasonable. And that reaction, more than anything else, made the doubts grow heavier. The modern world has turned secrecy into a normal habit. We scroll through endless content, flood our minds with constant stimulation, and escape reality with a simple swipe. And sometimes, people start building entire emotional lives inside their phones, far away from the ones who share their real homes. One night, as he slept, I lay awake beside him, listening to the soft rhythm of his breathing. His phone rested under his pillow, a habit he never had before. My chest tightened with each breath he took, not because of jealousy, but because of the growing realization that I didn't recognize him anymore. Or maybe I didn't recognize who he was becoming. A strange, painful question pulsed through my mind. When did we stop being a team? Marriage is supposed to be built on transparency, on openness, on trust. Yet here I was, lying next to a man whose digital life had become more intimate to him than our conversations. The next morning, as he prepared to leave for work, I watched him from the hallway. He typed on his phone with an urgency that didn't match his calm voice. His thumbs moved quickly, his expression shifting from focused to gentle. The kind of gentle that once belonged to me. He didn't see me watching. And in that hidden moment, I realized something that shattered me quietly, silently, without any dramatic break. He was emotionally invested in whatever or whoever was on the other side of that screen. And in the age of endless information, endless connections, endless distractions, emotional distance often begins long before physical betrayal. The world outside is louder, faster, more exciting than ever. And I wondered whether I had been drowned out by that noise. When he finally left the house, the silence he left behind felt too big, too empty, too heavy. I walked into the living room, sat on the couch we once shared so comfortably, and let the truth settle over me like cold air. Trust, once broken, doesn't disappear in a single blow. It unravels thread by thread, moment by moment, gesture by gesture, until one day you realize the fabric that once held you together is barely holding it all. Oh. And his new password, his new habits, his new distance, they weren't just signs. They were warnings. Warnings I was no longer able to ignore. The following week became a delicate dance between pretending and observing, as if I were walking through my own life with careful steps, trying not to disturb the fragile balance that kept everything from collapsing. I felt myself slipping into a strange state of awareness, where every vibration of his phone, every subtle smile, every downward glance became a clue, a signal, a piece of a puzzle I was never meant to solve. The modern world teaches us to ignore instincts, to rely on logic, to demand proof. But proof isn't always what tells the truth. Sometimes it's intuition, the soft whisper inside you that says, "Pay attention," even when everything on the surface looks normal. And my intuition was no longer whispering, it was calling out to me louder each day. One evening, we sat together in the living room, the TV playing some random show in the background. He sat beside me, but the closeness felt artificial, like the space between us was filled with invisible tension. His attention drifted repeatedly to his phone, and each time it lit up, he moved it slightly away from my side, thinking I wouldn't notice. He didn't realize that distance speaks even when words don't. A message arrived and he froze for a fraction of a second. It was tiny, almost imperceptible, but I caught it, the tightening of his jaw, the shift in his posture, the brief hesitation before unlocking the screen. I saw his eyes soften, his lips curve just slightly. And then he quickly locked the phone again, forcing a casual expression as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something was happening every day. And the worst part was knowing that I had no access to it. That night I asked him if everything was okay. Not accusing, not angry, just a gentle question. His response came too quickly, too defensive, like he had prepared for it. "You're imagining things," he said. "You're being dramatic." He laughed, but the laugh didn't reach his eyes. Gaslighting doesn't always come in loud accusations or manipulative speeches. Sometimes it's disguised as light humor, as subtle dismissal, as making you feel ridiculous for simply noticing the truth. After he went to bed, I stayed on the couch, staring at the black TV screen reflecting my own worried expression. The world outside was buzzing with constant digital noise, but inside me everything was quiet, too quiet. I felt disconnected not just from him, but from myself, lost between my fears and the reality I didn't want to face. I remember the moment I realized the change wasn't temporary. It was permanent. It happened the next morning, so simple, yet so devastating. His phone buzzed while he was tying his shoes, and instead of ignoring it like he usually would, he sprang up instantly, grabbed the device, and turned his back to me as he read the message. He didn't even try to hide the urgency anymore. He typed something quickly, his fingers moving fast, then slipped the phone into his pocket as if storing something precious. When he finally turned around, he forced a smile, the kind of smile people use when they read trying to cover a crack in the wall with a fresh coat of paint. "Ready to go?" he asked casually, but nothing felt casual anymore. I watched him leave through the front door, the air shifting as he stepped outside, and I felt a strange emptiness settle over me. The kind of emptiness that comes when you realize you're being gradually replaced, not physically, but emotionally. In the digital age, emotional betrayal is sometimes quieter, softer. It begins with attention, with invested energy, with hidden conversations, with the comfort someone finds in a message that used to be reserved for you. And the person doing it often doesn't realize the damage until it's too late. That afternoon, I tried to distract myself cleaning, reading, listening to music, but my mind kept returning to the same place. I wondered if technology had changed all of us, if it had created a world where secrets could grow like weeds in the cracks of our relationships. Phones were supposed to make life easier, but they had become vaults, hiding places for feelings, conversations, desires. At some point, I found myself imagining scenarios, imagining the person on the other side of the screen, imagining the type of conversation they might be having. The human mind is merciless when left in silence. It fills gaps with fears, creates stories from shadows, paints entire worlds from single moments. And yet, deep inside, I wasn't angry. I was sad.
Because I realized I missed the version of him who once looked at me the same way he now looked at his phone.
Later that night, when he came home, his behavior was the same kind, polite, distant. He kissed me goodnight with a softness that didn't feel real, then turned away and placed his phone under his pillow again. And I lay there staring into the darkness, feeling like a stranger in my own life. Because sometimes, the hardest part isn't the possibility that someone is being unfaithful. The hardest part is knowing they're creating a world where you no longer belong. In the days that followed, I felt like I was living between two realities. The visible one where everything looked normal, and the invisible one inside my mind where everything felt wrong. On the outside, we were still a married couple, still sharing the same home, the same bed, the same routines. On the inside, I felt like we were miles apart, separated by something as small and as powerful as the glowing screen he refused to share. During those quiet hours when he was at work, I found myself scrolling through my own phone. Not for distraction, but almost for answers. I searched for things like signs your partner is hiding something or what it means when your husband suddenly puts a password on his phone. The internet, always ready, flooded me with articles, threads, stories from strangers whose lives sounded painfully similar to mine. Some of them wrote about emotional affairs that started with innocent messages. Others talked about secret accounts, private chats, hidden apps. Story after story, description after description. My heart tightened. It was like watching 1,000 possibilities unfold in front of me, each one worse than the last. The modern world gives us unlimited information, but it also gives us unlimited reasons to panic. I read about women who checked their husbands' phones and found proof of betrayal. I also read about women who checked and found nothing, but realized that their trust had already been broken by the act of looking. That thought haunted me. I felt trapped between two fears. The fear of what I might find, and the fear of never knowing. As I scrolled through social media, I saw perfect couples posing in carefully edited photos, laughing under sunsets, holding hands on trips, post captions about loyalty and partnership. And I caught myself wondering how many of those smiles were real, and how many were hiding passwords, secrets, and silent doubts like mine. The modern world lets us show a version of our lives that feels almost cinematic, but it rarely shows the quiet moments at midnight when your chest is tight and your thoughts are loud. It does not show the tension in the room when a phone lights up and one person looks away. It does not show the way trust can crumble without a single argument, just from a series of tiny, suspicious details. One afternoon, I met up with a close friend for coffee. I did not plan to tell her anything. I thought I would just talk about work, about life, about anything else. But as soon as she asked, "How are you really?" the words rose up in my throat, heavy and unsteady. I did not tell her everything, but I told her enough. I told her about the password, about the sudden shift, about the way he now protected his phone as if it contained his soul. She listened without interrupting, her eyes soft, her expression serious. When I finished, she took a deep breath and said something that stayed with me. "You are not crazy for noticing. You are not wrong for feeling that something is off. Our instincts are not old-fashioned, they are human. Technology may change, but your intuition is still your intuition." Her words felt like a small anchor in the middle of a storm. For days I had been wondering if I was overreacting, if I was letting the modern world and its constant information overload turn me into someone suspicious. But deep down I knew I was not imagining this. The distance was real, the change was real. The secrecy was real. When I went back home, the house felt different, not because anything had changed, but because I finally admitted to myself that something had to. I could not live in a permanent state of half trust, half fear. I could not keep pretending everything was fine while my chest carried a quiet ache that never fully went away. That evening, he came home later than usual. He apologized quickly, saying work had been crazy, that things were busier than ever. He hugged me, but there was a slight delay in the way his arms wrapped around me, as if his mind was still somewhere else. When his phone buzzed in his pocket during dinner, he did not even finish chewing before checking it. He turned slightly to the side, his eyes locked on the screen for a few seconds longer than necessary. I watched his expression shift from serious to soft, then back to neutral. When he looked up at me, I pretended I had not noticed. He smiled and changed the subject. That night, I lay awake in bed again, listening to the familiar sound of his breathing. His phone was once more hidden under the pillow, like a small, silent intruder between us. I stared at the ceiling, my mind full, my body exhausted, my heart torn between wanting to know and wanting to protect what was left of my peace.
Modern life has given us instant access to everything, every piece of information, every opinion, every possibility. But it has also given us more ways to doubt, more reasons to question, more temptations to compare. Sometimes I wondered whether people in the past, without all these devices, slept more peacefully, or if human insecurity has always been this loud. As the hours passed, a new thought began to form inside me, slow and steady. I realized that if I kept waiting for the truth to reveal itself, I might spend months or years trapped in this uncertainty. The weight of not knowing was already draining me, affecting my mood, my sleep, my ability to feel safe in my own home. I did not want to become someone who begged for honesty, someone who had to fight for clarity. But I also did not want to keep pretending. At some point, something would have to break, either the illusion I was clinging to or the silence that was holding us hostage. There in the quiet darkness of our bedroom, with the faint light from the street leaking through the curtains, I understood something important. The modern world may be loud, fast, and full of distractions, but some questions are timeless. Do you trust the person you share your life with? And if the answer is no, can you keep living like this? As my eyes finally grew heavy, one thought settled in my mind with painful clarity. I did not just need answers, I deserved them. The next days blended together in a slow, heavy rhythm, each one marked by small moments that fed my growing uncertainty. I moved through the house like a quiet observer, noticing the tiniest shifts in his behavior, the subtle ways he protected his phone, the careful tone in his voice when he spoke to me. I wished I could unsee these details, wished I could return to the version of us that didn't need passwords or second guesses. But once doubt enters a home, it grows roots quickly. Whenever his phone chimed, even softly, his entire body reacted before his mind did, as if he were tuned to a private frequency that I no longer shared. Sometimes he smiled faintly at the messages, a small, warm smile that once belonged to our inside jokes. Now it was given to someone behind a screen I would never see. It was strange how something so small could feel like a bruise pressed over and over again. One afternoon, as he worked in the home office, I passed by and noticed how carefully he angled his laptop. Not enough to seem suspicious, but enough to signal that whatever he was doing, he preferred I didn't see. Before, he used to call me over to show me a funny video or a random meme. Now that door was closed, literally and metaphorically. Modern relationships suffer in silence. Not because the love disappears suddenly, but because distance grows quietly through unanswered questions, avoided eye contact, and private notifications. The world gives us limitless ways to hide, and too many reasons to feel insecure. It's a strange paradox, living in a society so connected and yet feeling more isolated than ever. That evening, as we sat together at dinner, he kept his phone face down beside his plate. The conversation flowed, but always on the surface. Nothing deep, nothing vulnerable. He smiled when I talked, but his eyes drifted toward the phone whenever it buzzed gently against the table. Each vibration seemed like a reminder that an entire part of his life had been moved into a digital universe where I had no access. And I wondered whether this was how emotional abandonment begins, not with a confession or a betrayal, but with tiny choices made every day. Choices to share thoughts with someone else. Choices to smile at a message instead of at your partner. Choices to hide instead of communicate. Later that night, he fell asleep quickly, exhaustion softening his features. But for me, sleep remained distant. I lay there listening to the faint hum of traffic outside, staring at the ceiling while his phone rested under the pillow again. It felt like a symbol at this point, a silent intruder lying between us, dividing the space that once felt warm and familiar. My thoughts wandered back to the early years of our marriage. Back when we talked for hours, when trust came naturally, when our intimacy was built on transparency rather than routine. I remembered the nights we stayed awake laughing, the mornings we shared coffee without him checking his phone before greeting me. Those memories felt like a different lifetime. I felt a sting of guilt, wondering if I had changed too. Maybe the world had made both of us more withdrawn, more distracted, more vulnerable to external validation. Phones, apps, messages, online communities, they all offer instant comfort, instant attention, instant escape. And people often go where attention feels easiest. But even with all these rational explanations, my heart still whispered the same question.
The one that had become a constant echo in my mind.
Why did he put that password on overnight?
Why so suddenly?
Why with no explanation? Why the secrecy that followed?
As I lay there, emotions swirling, I realized something new.
This wasn't just about the phone. It wasn't even about betrayal. It was about trust being replaced by uncertainty, affection replaced by distance, and communication replaced by digital noise.
It was about feeling invisible in a world overflowing with constant connectivity.
The next morning, I watched him get ready for work. He styled his hair, put on his jacket, checked his phone with a small smile that he tried to hide.
Then he tucked the device deep into his pocket and kissed me goodbye.
The kiss was soft, quick, almost automatic.
When the door closed behind him, I felt a sudden wave of clarity.
The kind that comes not from anger, but from emotional exhaustion. I realized I didn't want to spy on him. I didn't want to search his phone. I didn't want to play detective in my own marriage. What I wanted was honesty.
I wanted a partner, not a mystery. As the hours passed, I sat in the living room thinking about what love looks like today.
How relationships must fight not just against human flaws, but against digital temptations, endless distractions,
and the illusion of constant connection.
Technology may not be the villain, but it certainly provides the perfect hiding place for someone searching for something outside their relationship. By the time evening approached, I had made up my mind.
I couldn't keep holding the weight of my doubts alone.
Sooner or later, the truth would have to be addressed, not through accusations, but through vulnerability. Through a conversation that might hurt, but needed to happen. And as I waited for him to come home, one thought lingered in my mind like an unresolved chord.
If he was hiding something, I needed to know.
But if he wasn't, then something deeper was broken.
And either way, the silence between us could not continue.
The evening he came home felt heavier than the others, as if the house itself sensed the weight of what was building between us. I heard the keys turning in the lock, the familiar sound of the door opening, his footsteps crossing the hallway. But instead of comfort, the sound filled me with a quiet unease, the kind that settles deep in the chest and refuses to leave. He walked in with the same polite smile he had been wearing for weeks, the same smile that tried to conceal a truth he wasn't ready to face.
He kissed my cheek gently, set his bag down, and slipped his phone into his pocket with the same fluid motion I had memorized.
A small gesture, but it set everything inside me trembling. We talked about work, about his day, about things that didn't matter.
His voice flowed smoothly, but the pauses between sentences felt strained, as if he were carefully choosing every word.
I watched him closely, not out of suspicion, but out of sorrow. When love starts to fade, it's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it just grows quiet, almost polite.
After dinner, we sat together on the couch. He grabbed the remote,
scrolling for something to watch. But I barely heard the noise from the TV. My mind was elsewhere,
turning over the questions that had been building inside me.
Questions that refused to stay buried any longer.
His phone buzzed once, twice, then a third time.
Each vibration felt like a heartbeat that didn't belong to our relationship. He reached for it quickly, angling the screen away from me in a movement so natural now it barely seemed intentional.
He smiled softly before locking the screen again.
That smile hit me harder than the secrecy. It was gentle, tender, personal.
And it wasn't for me. The ache in my chest deepened, stretching into something that felt like grief.
I realized then that I couldn't continue hiding behind silence. The house felt too small for all the unspoken fears, too quiet for the weight of everything we weren't saying. So I took a slow breath, grounding myself before breaking the fragile calm between us. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected.
He froze for a brief moment, the kind of pause a person makes when they're checking the exits of a room.
Then he nodded, trying to mask the tension behind a cautious smile. Sure, he said, but the word felt defensive, cautious, like a shield. I looked at him, really looked at him, searching for the man I once knew so effortlessly. The man who didn't guard his phone like a vault, who didn't hide his expressions, who didn't make me question whether I still held a place inside his most private thoughts. I need to understand what's happening, I said quietly. Not with your phone, but with us. He looked down for a moment, then exhaled slowly. Nothing is happening, he replied, the same line he had repeated before. You're overthinking this. There it was again. The dismissal, the subtle shift of blame. The attempt to paint my intuition as paranoia, but this time I didn't back down. I know something has changed, I continued. You've been distant. You protect your phone like it's something dangerous. You smile at it in ways you don't smile at me anymore. And I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to give you space, but I can't keep pretending I don't see it. His eyes flickered, guilt, fear, frustration. I couldn't tell. But something inside him cracked for a second. A tiny break in the mask he had been wearing. You're imagining things, he said again. But his voice lacked confidence now. Silence expanded between us like a slow burn. I felt my throat tighten, but I forced myself to speak through it. I don't want to accuse you of anything. I'm not asking for proof or explanations. I just need honesty. If you're stressed, tell me. If you're unhappy, tell me. If you're drifting away, tell me. I deserve that much. He swallowed hard, his jaw tensing. His fingers fidgeted with the seam of a pillow, a nervous habit I had rarely seen. He looked everywhere except into my eyes. It's just work, he muttered. Work has been difficult. I've needed space. But the words didn't match the behavior. The secrecy, the constant checking, the hidden smiles, none of it aligned with the excuse he offered. And in that moment, I realized that lies don't always arrive as clear fabrications. Sometimes they arrive as half-truths wrapped in convenience. Sometimes they are made of silence rather than words. I felt a tear forming, not out of anger, but out of mourning. Mourning for a version of us that felt far away now, almost unreachable. I don't want to lose you, I whispered. But I can't be the only one fighting to keep us together. He finally looked at me then, and for a second, just a second, I saw the conflict in his eyes. A war between guilt and fear, between truth and comfort, between the life he had and the secret world he was building behind a locked screen. But instead of opening up, he looked away again, retreating into silence. The silence answered more than words could. I leaned back on the couch, feeling something inside me shift. Something subtle but irreversible. Because sometimes the most painful truth isn't what someone is hiding. It's the realization that they no longer choose you. That night, after our tense conversation on the couch, the house felt different. Not because we had shouted, not because there had been a dramatic fight, but because something inside me had finally shifted. I had stopped trying to convince myself that I was imagining things. I had stopped blaming my feelings on insecurity. For the first time, I allowed myself to fully acknowledge what had been happening. He went to bed earlier than usual, saying he was tired. I watched him walk down the hallway, the soft light from the bedroom spilling into the dark corridor. I heard the familiar sound of the mattress, the quiet rustle of sheets, the small click of his phone being plugged in beside him. I stayed in the living room, seated on the couch where we had just tried to talk and failed. The television was off. The room dim, the silence heavy. It was strange, how silence can feel louder than any argument when so much has been left unsaid. I thought about the world we live in, this era of constant connection and constant distraction. We carry in our hands devices that can access any information, any person at any time. We live surrounded by notifications, messages, posts, videos, opinions. All of it designed to pull our attention away from the present moment. Some people say that phones are neutral, that they are just tools, that what matters is how we use them. And maybe that is true. But sitting there in the quiet, I could not ignore the reality that his phone had become more than a tool. It had become a wall between him and me, between the life we shared and the life he kept hidden. I wondered how many couples around the world were going through something similar. How many partners were lying awake in the dark, staring at the outline of a glowing screen and asking themselves the same questions I was asking. When did I stop being enough? When did this device start knowing more about the person I love than I do? When did our relationship become something that had to compete with private messages and secret conversations? The truth was painful, but clear. Trust had been replaced by doubt, closeness replaced by distance, honesty replaced by carefully chosen half-truths. And none of it had started with a fight or a confession. It had started with something that, on the surface, seemed so small. A password. One simple action, one new layer of secrecy, one silent decision to hide. I finally turned off the lights and went to the bedroom. He was already sleeping, or at least pretending to. His body was turned away from my side of the bed, his shoulders slightly tense. I lay down beside him and stared at the ceiling, my heart heavy but strangely calm. I did not cry that night. I had already spent too many nights crying in silence. Instead, I did something different. I listened to my own thoughts. I realized that I could not control what he chose to hide, who he chose to talk to, or how deeply he had allowed technology to pull him away from our marriage. But I could choose what I did with the truth my intuition had given me. I could choose whether to keep living in a state of quiet suspicion or whether to reclaim my voice, my boundaries, and my self-respect. In a world overflowing with information, it is easy to drown in what-ifs. What if he is cheating? What if it is harmless? What if I am overreacting? What if I am not? These thoughts can spin forever, like a wheel that never stops turning. But one question cut through the noise with surprising clarity. Do I feel safe in this relationship? The answer deep down was no. Not safe emotionally. Not safe mentally. Not safe in the sense of being able to trust, to relax, to believe that my heart was being treated with care. And once I accepted that answer, something inside me settled. It hurt, but it also felt honest. The next morning, I woke up before him. The room was dim, the air still. He was sleeping on his side, his phone partially visible under his pillow, as usual. There was a time when I would have been tempted to reach for it, to search for proof that my doubts were valid, but I did not move. I did not touch the phone. I realized that I did not need digital proof of betrayal to justify my feelings. The way he had changed, the secrecy, the dismissive responses, the distance, all of it was already evidence of something deeply wrong. I got out of bed quietly and walked to the kitchen. As the coffee machine hummed softly, I leaned against the counter and took a deep breath. I knew that soon decisions would have to be made. Whether he confessed or continued to deny, whether he chose honesty or continued to hide, whether he fought for us or stayed loyal to his secret world, I would have to decide what I was willing to accept. The modern world makes it easy to stay in broken situations. We can distract ourselves with content, with scrolling, with endless noise. We can avoid difficult conversations by staring into screens. We can stay physically present while being emotionally absent. But deep down, our hearts always know when something is wrong. As I poured my coffee, a thought came to me, simple but powerful. I began doubting my husband when he put a password on his phone overnight. But what I truly began doubting was the idea that love can survive without honesty, in a world that constantly offers us ways to hide. The phone was not the real enemy. The overflow of information, the constant stimulation, the ease of escaping into digital comfort, all of that played a part. But in the end, it came down to choice. His choice to lock me out, and my choice to stop pretending that I did not feel it. Standing there, holding the warm cup between my hands, I understood that this moment was a turning point. Whether our story ended in reconciliation or separation, whether he decided to unlock more than just his screen, or whether I decided to walk away from the silence, one thing was certain. I would no longer ignore my own voice just to protect his secrets. In a world full of screens, full of noise, full of distractions, I owed myself something much more valuable. Clarity, and that, more than anything else, was where my healing would begin. The morning unfolded slowly, as if the world outside were giving me space to breathe before everything changed. I moved through the kitchen quietly, letting my thoughts settle into place like pieces of a puzzle I had spent weeks trying to understand. The truth was no longer something I needed to uncover. It was already here.
It had been here all along, woven into silence, secrecy, and the uneasy distance between us. When he finally woke up and entered the room, he looked tired. Or maybe the word was guilty. His eyes avoided mine at first, searching for something to say, something that might smooth over the tension that had been building between us day after day. "Morning," he said softly, his voice carrying a cautious warmth.
I returned the greeting, but something in my tone made him pause. He sensed the shift. He knew I was no longer standing in the same place he had left me emotionally. We sat at the table, two people who once shared everything, now separated by a silence heavier than any argument. He reached for his coffee, but his hand trembled slightly. The phone remained close to him, as always, an invisible barrier between us. I took a deep breath. "We can't keep living like this," I said quietly. He stopped moving. Not a single muscle in his face shifted. It was as if he had been expecting the words, just not the calmness with which I spoke them. "I know something is going on," I continued. "Maybe it's someone else. Maybe it's not. But the secrecy, the distance, the way you shut me out, all of that has changed us. And I won't pretend it hasn't." He opened his mouth, ready to deny, ready to repeat the same lines he had used before. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the steadiness of my voice. Maybe it was the exhaustion he saw in my eyes. Maybe it was the truth pressing too heavily on his conscience. Whatever it was, he didn't lie this time. He lowered his gaze, shoulders sinking, and whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt you." Pain washed over me, not because of the words themselves, but because of the resignation behind them. They were not a confession, not an apology, not a promise to change. They were simply an admission that he knew what he was doing, and he did it anyway. Then why hide it? I asked. Silence. A long, empty silence. The kind that tells you everything you need to know without saying anything at all. "I don't know what happened to us," he finally said. "I felt disconnected. I didn't want to burden you with my problems. And the messages, they were a distraction. A way to escape. I didn't realize how far it had gone. It wasn't a dramatic confession. There was no explosive revelation, no affair to expose, no scandal, no smoking gun. Just emotional distance. Emotional comfort found in someone else. Emotional intimacy shared through a glowing screen instead of across the table where I sat every day. And somehow that hurt even more. Because betrayal isn't always physical. Sometimes it's the quiet replacement of emotional closeness, given to someone who hasn't earned it. I nodded slowly, absorbing his words. They didn't fix anything. They didn't erase the nights I spent awake, the questions that haunted me, the way my heart tightened every time his phone buzzed. But they did give me clarity. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm tired. And I'm done pretending that trust still exists here." He looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time in weeks. His eyes softened, and for a moment I could see the man I once knew. The man who loved me openly, without screens, without secrecy. But that version of him was gone, replaced by someone shaped by distraction, avoidance, and the ease of digital escape. "Are you leaving?" he asked, his voice cracking. "No," I answered. "Not today, not like this. But I'm stepping back. I need to find myself again. Before we figure out if there is anything left to save." He nodded, tears pooling at the corners of his eyes, though he tried to hide them. Silence filled the room again, but it felt different this time. Not the cold silence of avoidance, but the honest silence of two people acknowledging the truth at last. I stood up from the table, grabbed my coat, and walked toward the door. As I reached for the handle, I paused and turned back to him. "I began doubting my husband when he put a password on his phone overnight," I said softly. "But I began finding myself when I stopped pretending that everything was fine." He bowed his head, unable to respond. I stepped outside, letting the cold morning air wrap around me like a reminder that I was still here, still breathing, still capable of choosing myself. The world felt strangely wide, strangely open, as if life were giving me space to heal. Maybe we would rebuild. Maybe we wouldn't. Maybe honesty would bring us back together. Or maybe it would set us free. But as I walked away from the house, one thing felt certain. In a world overflowing with secrets, screens, and silent betrayals, I had finally chosen clarity over confusion, truth over illusion, and self-respect over fear. And that choice, no matter what happened next, was the first real step toward healing.